about reproduction in organisms in details. Now this is the first chapter, right, of class 12, and we are going to complete this whole chapter in just 1 hour. Now just listen to this live chat, and if you have any question, you can surely ask it. So well, the topic reproduction in organisms. This is the first topic. Now what is reproduction? Can we define reproduction as a characteristics for living beings? No, we cannot define reproduction as a characteristics for living beings. Why? Because some are there, some living beings like mules, worker bees in the honeybees. Okay, these worker bees do not reproduce. They do not reproduce. So that doesn't mean that they are not living, right? That doesn't mean that they are not living. So every living organism may or may not reproduce, but every organism can respond. So responsiveness is the defining character of, or you may say a defining feature of the living beings, but reproduction is not the defining feature. Reproduction is a characteristic feature. So what is reproduction? Reproduction is a characteristic feature. Okay, so what is reproduction? Reproduction is a characteristic feature of all the living forms, because living forms, if living forms are present, then living forms will surely reproduce. Okay, and why they will reproduce? What is the need for reproduction? Why do we need to reproduce? It was like that, if we don't reproduce, what will happen, right? If we don't reproduce, and why? This question is very, very important, that why do organisms reproduce? Okay, and the answer to this question is, so let's answer this question also. So the answer to this question is to maintain continuity of the species. Okay, to maintain the continuity. Now suppose if one of the species do not reproduce, if someone in the middle do not reproduce, suppose there is a generation, we may say there is a, in a population, suppose I, there's some such generation, like generation A is there, then generation B is there, then generation C is there. Okay, now as there was reproduction, then only we could get generation A, and then from generation A we got generation B, the next generation, obviously. So how do we get the next generation? How it is maintained, that A, B, C generation, how it is maintained? Because the population or the people of generation A is reproducing, and we are getting generation B. Then B is reproducing, then we are obtaining generation C, right? So why do organisms need to reproduce? The organisms need to reproduce to maintain the continuity of the species. Clear? Okay. Now, do all the organisms reproduce in a similar manner? Now, next alarming question to this is, do all the organisms, my question to you, reproduce in a similar manner? Yes. Do all of them reproduce in a similar manner? Okay. So answer to this question is no. All of them do not reproduce in a similar manner. Every organism is different from another organism, and every species reproduce in a different manner, right? And no two species reproduce together. No two species of organism reproduce together. Okay, so they are said to be reproductively isolated. So they are said to be reproductively isolated. Okay, as for example, what we can say? For example, we can say that the tiger species, okay, the tiger species never reproduces with a lion species. Can we see a marriage between a tiger and a lion? And no, it's a big no. We cannot see such marriages. So this is species 1, this is species 2, and they're not reproducing between them. So we cannot see any type of offspring between a tiger and a lion. So no two species reproduce together. But there is an exception, because due to mankind, we have made two different species. We have made two different species to reproduce. Okay, we have made the donkey, right? We have made the donkey and the horse to reproduce together. Okay, and this reproduction is known as captive breeding. This reproduction is known as captive breeding for our enhancement, for food production, for labor, for improvement. Okay, for our improvement, for our economy, we are doing this, and this is known as captive breeding. And the organism which is produced by the horse and the donkey is a mule. Now this mule is not reproducing. This mule does not reproduce, but the mule is living. But the mule is considered as a living organism, right? So there may be organisms who may not reproduce, but they are considered as living organism. Okay, so living organism. Mule is also a living organism. Clear? Now we will go to another thing, that is, as I said that no, so what will be the answer? That do all the organisms reproduce in a similar manner? No, none of them reproduce in a similar manner. No two species can reproduce in a similar manner. Okay, now the process of reproduction varies across various kingdoms. Okay, so the process of reproduction varies across various kingdoms and also within the kingdoms. Various kingdoms, like there are how many kingdoms? There are 5 kingdoms according to Whitaker, which we have already learned. There are 5 kingdoms. And what are the 5 kingdoms? Protists, monerans, fungi, animalia, and the plantae. So this protists, monera, fungi, animalia, and the plantae do not reproduce. Okay, do not reproduce in a similar manner. All of them reproduce differently. All of them reproduces differently, right? Now in this chapter, the main thing what we are going to study in this chapter is very, very important. Okay, so what we are going to study, I'll just sum up in this one slide only what we are going to study. So this is your chapter, that is reproduction in organisms, right? Okay, now what else we are going to study from here? Let us see. Now there are 2 types of reproduction, we all know, right? So there are 2 types of reproduction. One is the asexual reproduction, another one is the sexual reproduction. Okay, right? One is the asexual reproduction, another one is sexual reproduction. Okay, so asexual reproduction, what are the types of asexual reproduction, and what are the types of sexual reproduction, and how the sexual reproduction is done, how the asexual reproduction is done. Okay, so in asexual reproduction there are lots of types. So first there is fission. Now the fission are of 2 types, that is binary fission and multiple fission. Okay, so yes, fission. Okay, so fission are of 2 types again. One is binary fission, one is multiple fission. Okay, 2 types of fission we can see in fission type of reproduction. Next, as first we are talking about asexual, so we will talk about every asexual reproduction. Second asexual reproduction is budding. Second asexual reproduction is budding. We'll talk about all of these in a details, but now we are just studying about all the types of asexual and sexual reproduction. Then comes the regeneration. Okay, this regeneration. After regeneration, what we get? Yes, after regeneration, we get formation of the juice spore. Okay, spore formation. Okay, that is spore formation. We say this type of reproduction is known as spore formation or sporulation. Spore formation or sporulation. Okay. Now after sporulation, what we get, another type of reproduction. After sporulation, it is vegetative reproduction. It is vegetative reproduction, that is reproduction from the parts of the plants, like the vegetative parts. Okay, so this is known as vegetative reproduction, which is seen in case of the plants. Okay, now we'll study about the sexual reproduction parts. What type of sexual reproduction? Okay, so let us just study about this in detail, and then we'll go to the sexual reproduction. Okay. So budding, we can see budding in case of the yeast or in the case of the hydra. Okay. Regeneration can be seen in case of the flatworms. Who are the flatworms? The flatworms such as planaria. Now this is also a NEET bomber question. It comes in NEET, so it is very important. And please do mark as a NEET bomber. Okay. Next, zoospore formation is seen in which type of organism? Zoospore formation is seen in Chlamydomonas. Okay, zoospore formation is seen in Chlamydomonas. And then is vegetative reproduction. The vegetative reproduction is seen in potato. Okay, then it is seen in potato from the tuber. Okay, then it is seen from the Biophylum leaf. It is seen in the Biophylum leaf from the leaf buds. Okay, from the leaf buds. Next, it is also seen in ginger. Okay, new plants arises from the rhizome. In the banana also and ginger also, new plant arises from the rhizome. Then what else we can see? We can also see water hyacinth. We can also see water hyacinth. So water hyacinth arises from your offsets. You can find the picture in your NCERT book. And another one, what is that? That is bulbs. Bulbs, it will be, the example will be onion. Onion arises from the bulbs. Clear, students? Now we will come to the sexual reproduction. We have studied all the parts of the asexual reproduction, how the sexual reproduction is done, and what is the type of sexual reproduction, and what type of organisms perform or take part in the asexual reproduction. Right? Asexual reproduction, in asexual reproduction, we do not get variation of the species, we just get clones, that is a similar kind of species. But in sexual reproduction, why do we need to do sexual reproduction? Because of the factor that we get variations. No two species in the sexual reproduction is same unless and until they are the twins. The twins are also a little bit different genetically, but twins, unless and until they are twins, then they are not same in the sexual reproduction. Every species is different. So first, in sexual reproduction, we find lots of events. We find lots of events in sexual reproduction. And what are those events in sexual reproduction? So these events are very important. I'll share each and every event in sexual reproduction. So first event is pre-fertilization. There are very events, and sexual reproduction events are pre-fertilization. Okay, that is before fertilization. What else happens? Then comes fertilization, that is the actual phase when the two of the gametes fuses, or you may say it is the fusion of the gametes. Okay, fertilization. What is fertilization? Fertilization is the fusion of the gametes, right? Then comes the post fertilization. Okay, then comes the post fertilization. Okay, this one is the post fertilization. Yes, very good. So this is a post fertilization. So in the sexual reproduction, we find lots of events, one by one, sequential events. It goes, first comes pre-fertilization, then comes fertilization, the third one at the last step is post fertilization. Then after fertilization also some changes occur. And what are those changes? Those changes are, I'll surely discuss here. So first we start from pre-fertilization. What is pre-fertilization and what else happens in pre-fertilization? So two things happens in pre-fertilization. One is gametogenesis. We studied in already in class 10, right? What is gametogenesis? That is the formation of your gametes, and number 2 is gamete transfer. So one is gamete is formed, then the gamete must also be transferred to the actual destination where the gamete must be present, right? So that actual destination, the transfer of the gamete to its actual destination is known as gamete transfer. Clear, students? Now in the fertilization, what else happens in the fertilization? We have to study that also, that what is the factor actually that happens in fertilization. So fertilization is of two types. One is external fertilization, one is external fertilization, one is internal fertilization. So when there's external fertilization, the mature gametes, that is the one is the male gamete, okay, one is the male gamete and one is the female gamete. These two mature gametes, what they do, they first comes out from the male body and the female body, okay, they comes out from the male body and the female body, and then, okay, so I'll show you how it happens. It comes out from the male body and the female body, and then they fuses together. Okay, so they comes out like this. If this is the male gamete, this is the female gamete. Before only before the fertilization is done, it comes out from both of the male and the female body, and then it fuses. So this fusion type is done outside the body of the parents. Okay, outside the body of the parents. Then it is known as external fertilization, right? And when the fertilization is done inside the body of the parents, then it is known as internal fertilization in case of the human females. Okay, now we'll come to post fertilization. So when the fertilization is done, the male and the female gamete is fused, then what do we get? We get a zygote, right? Then we get a zygote, which is 2N in structure. This male gamete was N and female gamete was N, and when they both fuses, we get a 2N like structure, right? And this is the zygote actually. Now what happens? This zygote forms the embryo, right? This zygote, what does zygote forms? After fertilization, this zygote grows and it forms the embryo. It takes another shape. It goes on cell division. It goes through morula, blastula stages, and then it forms the embryo, which is a fully grown zygote, right? Now for the journey of the zygote, from the journey of this offspring from the zygote to the embryo is known as embryogenesis, because during embryogenesis a lot of events occur during embryogenesis. Okay, now this embryogenesis forms in two steps. One is oviparous. Okay, this forms in two steps. One is oviparous and another is viviparous. Another is viviparous. Now what is oviparous? From the name only oviparous we can see it. So what is oviparous? In oviparous what happens? The eggs are once there is fusion, right? Once there is fusion, and then there are formation of the eggs. Okay, now when there will be formation of the eggs, then it will be known as oviparous. When the eggs will be developing, when the embryo will be developing inside an egg, okay, inside an egg, then it will be oviparous. So the animals who lays egg, so egg layers are known as oviparous. Okay, egg layers are known as oviparous. And when the embryo development will take place in the mother's womb, then it will be known as viviparous. Okay, so that egg layers are oviparous. So birth takers, the birth givers who gives birth to the young ones, okay, direct birth, who give direct birth to young ones. So these are known as viviparous. Now who gives direct birth to the young one? Tell me. It's very easy. You can surely tell me. Yes. Who give birth? The mammals give birth. Very good. The mammals give birth to the young ones. And who lays eggs? Who lays eggs? The birds lays eggs, the reptiles lays eggs. So yes, this type of eggs layers are known as the oviparous, and the birth givers are known as the mammals or the viviparous. Clear? This was the total thing which you're going to study in this chapter, that is reproduction in organisms. Okay, so we all will study this thing only in the reproduction in organism. Let us just mark it. So I have completed. What else will study? Whole chapter I'll complete it in just one slide. Now if you like this session, then make sure that you subscribe to our channel Anamika's EduSpace for more live videos like this, and also don't forget to share this live video with your friends. Okay, next, after this what we are going to study is, which is very important. Yes, so which is very important, that is period from birth to natural death is known as lifespan. Okay, period from birth to natural death is known as lifespan. Okay, which I already explained, but I'll also explain in this chapter because it is very important. Now, many organisms or the different organism and different lifespan. Like the elephant, right? If we say an example of an elephant can live up to 65 to 90 years. Okay, elephant can live up to 65 to 90 years. Whereas rose can live up to, a rose plant, I'm telling, not a flower. A rose plant can live 5 to 7 years. Okay, you can cultivate a rose plant, a single rose plant, which can live to up to 5 to 7 years. Then a banana tree. If you take up an example of a banana tree, the banana tree can live from almost, you can say, 20 to 25 years. The banana tree is so lively, it can live from 20 to 25 years. Where is a banyan tree? Where is a banyan tree? You can see the difference in the trees also. Where is a banyan tree can live from 200 to 300 years long. A banyan tree is so long. A tortoise also can live from 100 to 150 years. A tortoise is such a long living, you may say, animal that can live from 100 to 150 years. Okay. Now we'll start with the introduction chapter, that is what is actually reproduction, ma'am. And what else we will write when you are studying in class 12, right? What is the definition? So it is nothing but it is a biological process. Okay, what it is a biological process in which an organism gives rise to another organism. Okay, in which what happens, an organism gives rise to another organism. We may say rise to their offspring, or we may say rise to their young ones. Okay, so biological process in which an organism can give rise to their young ones. Okay, and also it is a process which helps in enabling the continuity of the species, which is very important. You have to mention because you are studying in class 12 now. Okay, enabling the continuity of the species. Now, reproduction. In reproduction, what I say, that there is gamete formation. Okay, in reproduction, first step of reproduction comes with gamete formation. May it be asexual, may it be sexual, but there is gamete formation in both of the stages. Okay. Now gametes are, in case of the two types of gametes we can find, one is XX and one is XY. Right? XX is the female gamete. and XY is the male gamete. Okay. Now, two type of reproduction in gamete formation can go with the sexual reproduction also, and also with the asexual reproduction. Gamete formation can be both asexual and sexual. Next, asexual. Now we'll study about clearly about asexual reproduction. Asexual reproduction. Okay. So, in asexual reproduction, what all phenomena happen, and what else is important? First thing which is important in asexual reproduction is single parent. Only no two parents is required. Only a single parent is capable. Okay, is capable of producing offsprings. A single parent is capable of producing offsprings. Okay, so the offsprings are identical to one another because no different parent is present, and also there's no different thing is doing. So number two, which is very important, the offsprings are identical. Please do write down as I'm writing, okay, so that it will help you to make note as soon as you study in the class. Okay. See, the offsprings are identical to one another, and thus there's no variation. So this is also very important, that thus there is no variation. And as these are identical, so what these are known as? These are the clones. That is the exact copy. Clones means exact copies, as exact Xerox copy. In asexual reproduction, what we find? Actually, in asexual reproduction, we find exact Xerox copies of the same organism, same genetic makeup, similar look, similar phenotype, similar each and everything is similar to their parents. Xerox copies of their parents, of their parents, as the similar, and it also helps in continuity of the species, or also helps in maintaining the continuity of the species. Though it doesn't gives if there's no evolution, there's no variation, there's nothing, there's no mutation, nothing, but yes, there is continuity of the species. Okay. Now, single-celled organism like the Monera and the Protista do this asexual reproduction. Okay. Who does this asexual reproduction? The single-celled organism. Single-celled organisms. And who are these single-celled organisms? Which is very important. Monera and Protista. Monera and Protista. So Monera and Protista are the single-celled organisms, right? Who does the binary fission? For example, what is binary fission? Binary fission will study in detail, but who does this binary fission? This binary fission, already I said you, this is done by amoeba. Amoeba and paramecium. So amoeba and the paramecium does this binary fission. Okay. Now, how this binary fission is done, we'll clearly understand. But before that, we'll study about another. So we'll understand binary fission first, then we'll go to another topic. Okay. As we study about amoeba, okay, as we study about amoeba, so what does amoeba does? Okay, let me draw a cell. So this was the cell, suppose. Okay, this was the cell. Then gradually amoeba transforms. This is another. This is a cell. Let me draw it first, and then I'll make you understand what else actually happens. Okay. Okay. So Here you can see the transfer of the genetic material. We'll get to understand once I completely draw this. Complete. You will find this drawing in your book also. Okay. So this is the new. I'll just change the color. Yes. So this is the nucleus. Okay. This is the nucleus we can find, which is getting like this in this form, and then the nucleus is separated into two, and there's breaking and formation of two daughter cell. Okay, so this is the nucleus, and many other material is also present in the cell. We may say the cell cytoplasm and all. Many other material is also present. I think you can relate this diagram with the book diagram, because this diagram is very important when you study about binary fission, or we will not be able to understand the two terms, that is fission. Fission means breakage. Okay, fission. What do you understand by the term fission? Fission means breakage, break. Okay, and fusion. Fusion means union. Okay, here it is breaking, here it is combining, here it is combining, and here it is breaking. Okay, so this is the difference between fission and fusion. Here we are studying about fission. So see how this one is the parent, this one was the parent. Now how the parent nucleus has broken into two, right? So when the parent nucleus divides into two, when that parent nucleus divides into two daughter nuclei, then it is known as binary fission. Then it is known as binary fission. Two halves. Okay, it will divide into two halves, and this is known as binary fission. And when this only divides into many, then it will divide into many, then it will be known as multiple fission. Then it will be known as multiple fission, that is many daughter cells. Many daughter cells. Okay, and this is also found in amoeba. Amoeba can go binary fission also, and amoeba can see the multiple fission also. Okay, binary fission and multiple fission, both can be seen in amoeba. Okay, but it is very minute. In the amoeba, the multiple fission is very minute. Okay, in the case of when there is unfavorable condition, amoeba withdraws its parapodia. Suppose this is the two elongation, or we may say these are the two false foots. Okay, we may say this is the false foot and this is almost false fit. We may say, so this is known as the pseudopodia. This is known as a pseudopodia. So, in the unfavorable condition, when there is no food, no resources, no water, the temperature is high and all, then what happens? The amoeba withdraws its parapodia, secretes 3 layers around them. Okay, it withdraws, it takes its parapodia inside the cell, and it withdraws 3 layers in it, and then what it happens? This 3-cell encystment, 3-layered encystment is known as encystation. Okay, 3-layer encystment is known as encystation. Okay, so this is around the cell of the amoeba, around the cell. It grows 3-layered encystment, and in this condition, it goes it goes to encystment. It produces the spores. In this situation, it produces spores, because this is the unfavorable situation, and in this unfavorable situation, it is not able to go to binary fission. Okay, after the incestation, when there is favorable situation, again there comes a favorable condition. Then in the favorable condition, the amoeba goes through multiple fission. Okay, that is the minute amoeba, that is the pseudospores are formed, and then the pseudospores, like the parent, by the parent, or this is the parent. The parent takes nutrition, and where with taking nutrition, it enlarges in size. This is the enlargement, and when it enlarges in size, then it breaks its nucleus into two halves. And then it forms the breakage, and there forms the two different erosion of the two different daughter cell from single parent or the one parent. So this is known as asexual reproduction. Okay, now the cyst wall, what happens in this case, that is when the amoeba forms cyst, then in the cyst wall bursts. The cyst wall, this wall, that is the cell under the three-layered cyst, 1, 2, 3, three-layer cyst is formed. Now this is cyst totally burst around, and after the burst of the seeds, what comes out? The spores comes out. Okay, here we get the spores. Okay, and this spores ultimately does the reproduction, and this reproduction is ultimately what it is called. When I said that when the spores come out, this reproduction will be known as sporulation. Okay, this reproduction will be known as sporulation. So this was the binary fission totally in amoeba. I hope you understood. Next we'll go with the yeast, that is budding or unequal division in the yeast. Okay, so now we go with the division on yeast. Now how the yeast does. This is number 2 phase of asexual reproduction, second part. Okay, so it is by budding. The yeast actually produces bud, right? And this budding is an unequal division. This budding is an unequal division. Okay, we get unequal division in case of this budding. Now, in this unequal division, what we find the yeast. Suppose this is the yeast. Okay, this is the yeast. Now when the yeast will be mature enough, it will produce a little bud out from there. Okay, it will produce a little bud. After that, this bud will grow in size. Okay, this bud will grow in size, and then again this bud will grow more in size, and then this bud will detach from the mother. This bud will detach from the mother. Okay, it will detach from the mother. So when it will detach, then when the bud will detach, then this is known as formation of the buds or budding. Okay, this one was the parent cell. This one was the parent cell from which a bud arose, a new bud arose. Okay, and when the new bud arose, the new bud grows in size. It grows in size by taking nutrition from the parent. Now, when it grows in size, it totally detaches from the parent and forms a new parent and forms a new individual. Forms a new individual. Okay, is it clear? So this is the budding. Now, coming to next, that is spore formation. Okay. Okay, now we'll come to the next topic. That is third topic is sporulation or spore formation. So, spore formation is also done by some of the other organism. Okay, now this spore formation is seen in the members of the fungi and the algae. We can see this in the members of the fungi and the algae members. Okay, and that's it. Yes, so through this, they form the asexual spores. They form the asexual spores. Now these asexual spores are called as zoospores. These asexual spores are called as juice spores. Okay. Now, what type of spores we find or what is present in your NCERT? Many example is present. One is conidia, right? Conidia, which is found in penicillium. We can also see the diagram. Okay, you can see the diagram. It is found in penicillium. Then buds, which is found in hydra. Okay, and we can find gamules, which is found in the sponges. So yes, gamete formation is another type of asexual reproduction. We can find the juice spore. We can also find the juice spore in Chlamydomonas, which I already said you. We can find the juice spore in Chlamydomonas. Okay, and find the juice spore in Chlamydomonas. Clear? So this is very, very important that you learn that conidia is of penicillium, right? Gamete formation is of sponges. Buds is of hydra, or it can be of yeast. Clear? And juice spore is always of Chlamydomonas. Clear? Now we will move to the vegetative reproduction, which is very, very important, and the last and the most important part of asexual reproduction. So after gamete formation on, we come to vegetative reproduction. Yes. So what is vegetative reproduction? So when the plants reproduce other than actually where the plants reproduces from, the plant reproduces from the reproductive part, that is flower. Flower contains what? Flower contains anther and stamen, right? Flower contains anther and stamen. And the anther is the male part. The flower contains the Yes. So the male part and the female part fuses together, and we form the new embryo, or the fruit is formed. Okay, the ovary is formed. The ovule is formed. But if the plant reproduces other than the ovary or other than the flower, that is from the leaves. 1 second. Okay. So if it reproduces from the leaves, if it reproduces from the stems, if it reproduces from the roots, okay, and if it reproduces from the tissues, then it is known as vegetative reproduction. Okay. Now vegetative reproduction is also a form of asexual reproduction. Okay. Here we find what? Here we find vegetative propagules. Okay, so the leftover part or from the part of the leaves from which new leaves arises, the part of the stem from which the new stem arises, the part of the root from which the new root arises, the part of the tissue. So these all are collectively known as vegetative propagules. Okay, these are known as vegetative propagules. Now, for example, what examples we can find in vegetative reproduction? The examples which we can find in vegetative reproduction are runner. Okay, we can find example of rhizome. We can find example of sucker. We can find example of tuber. We can find example of offset. We can find example of bulb. So these all are capable of giving rise to a new offspring. These all, that is runner, rhizome, each and everything is capable of giving birth or arising to a new offspring. They are all capable of giving birth to a new offspring. Okay. Now, in vegetative propagules, these are all called as vegetative. These are all that these. What are the vegetative? If you ask that, ma'am, what is vegetative propagules actually? Then I'll say that these are all actually known as the vegetative propagules. That is runner, rhizome, sucker, tuber, offset, bulb. These are all known as the vegetative propagules. Okay. Now in the vegetative after this we study about the water or the terror of Bengal. Okay. water hyacinth, which is very important for your NEET examination. Water hyacinth was a plant which was very beautiful, right? And it was growing rapidly. It can grow rapidly. It can grow rapidly and propagate. Grow rapidly, we may say, or it can propagate vegetatively. It can at a higher rate. It can propagate vegetatively at a higher rate. Okay, so this is known as hyacinth, and this water hyacinth was very beautiful, and it was brought to Bengal or West Bengal in India, and its growth was so invasive, so rapid that it became the terror of Bengal, and it was named as the weed. It was named as weed, invasive weed. So if it asks that name an invasive weed that grows rapidly and propagates vegetatively at a higher rate, then it is known as the water hyacinth, or we may say the terror of Bengal. Clear? This is also a NEET bomber question or a NEET MCQ question. It is asked in your NEET MCQ. Now we'll go to the buds or the eyes or the tubers in the potato. Now, buds of potato. How does potato arises? From the new bud or the eyes of the potato. Okay. How does banana and ginger arises? Banana and ginger arises from rhizome. Okay. Banana and ginger arises from rhizome. If we draw a ginger like this, then this is the part. This is the node-like part. So they arises from this node cutting. Okay, that is known as your actually the buds. The new buds like this we can see new buds coming out. So they arises from the rhizome. Next, what is the example? Okay. Now when these nodes come on the contact of the soil, when these nodes come if we cut the node and put it in the soil, if these nodes come in the contact of the soil, they gives rise to a new plant. Okay. Now, adventitious buds. Adventitious buds we can see in cases of the bryophyte. Okay. Now if I draw, one second, like a new slide. Okay, so if we draw the biophylum leaf, so this is the biophylum leaf. Okay, and new leaf comes out from the margin. New leaf comes out from the margin like this. We can find new leaf. So what we can say that the leaves are arising from the adventitious bud. Leaves are arising, or these are known as the adventitious bud. Okay. This is an example of what? This is an example of bryophyllum. Clear? Now, after biophylum, another most important example is offset. Offset, which is present in your NCERT, offset. So, when there is a propagation from the offset of water hyacinth or Ecornia species, we can find Ecornia species, the very beautiful looking curly leaves and all. We can find Ecornia species, which is known as terror of Bengal. So this Ecornia species travels, or this Ecornia species vegetatively propagates through this offset. Okay, this one is the offset. So when this offset comes in contact with another, then they reproduction, then the reproduction is done. So the plant rises from the new offset. If this is the offset, then another plant will arise from here. If this is the ending, then another plant will arise from here. Okay. So what we studied in vegetative propagation, first is eyes of potato, which is very, very important. These examples are very, very important. Next is rhizome of ginger or banana. Number C was bulbil of agave. Okay, I have not taught you bulbil of agave. I'll show you now only. Bulbil of agave. Number 4D is leaf buds in Bryophyllum. Leaf buds in Bryophyllum. And number E is offset of water hyacinth. Please do write it down if you don't have your NCERT with you. So what is bulbi? So this type of structure you can find. So this is almost looking like a bulb, right? This is almost looking like a bulb, and the new plant arises from this bulbil. So this is known as a bulbil of agave. Now we have completed totally about asexual reproduction. Now the most important thing which we continue, that is sexual reproduction. How it is done and what is the last stage and what happens actually in sexual reproduction. Okay. So at first, in sexual reproduction, we can find the fusion of the two gametes or the formation of the gamete. That is, first step is gamete formation. Okay. And in gamete formation, what type of gamete is formed? Two different types of morphologically different types of gametes are formed. What are the morphologically different type of gametes? The female gamete and the male gamete. Okay. They can be same or of different individual. They can be of same individual. Okay. Or of different individual. It can be also of different individual. Now this male gamete and the female gamete fuse. These male gamete and the female gamete fuse together. And when they fuse together, what do they produce? They produce a zygote. They produce a zygote, right? And this zygote grows into embryo. This zygote grows into embryo. And this embryo grows into a child or a baby. Okay. It actually grows into a baby. Not child. It grows into a baby. Now, this grows into baby. And this baby grows into a child. Okay, this baby grows into a child. And this child grows into adult. This child grows into adult. And adult produces male gamete or female gamete. And again, when the adult is mature, okay, mature adult, when the adult is mature, then the adult again produces gamete and then diffuses and we get the zygote and ultimately we get embryo, and the cycle goes on and it maintains the continuity of the species. Okay. Now, what we get in this type of sexual reproduction, why do we do this sexual reproduction and why it is important? So sexual reproduction is very, very important because it is an elaborate process. In the asexual reproduction, all these things were not happening. Only one parent was there, and from the parent, two daughter cells were forming. Yes, this was asexual reproduction. But in sexual reproduction, so many things are there, right? Pre-fertilization event, fertilization, then post-fertilization event, so many events are there. So asexual reproduction is elaborate, right? It is complex to study. Okay, so many events are there, so many processes are there, and it is also slow process. Very elaborate process, complex process, slow process. These three things are very, very important while you are studying sexual reproduction. Okay. And along with it, The most important thing is offsprings are not identical. Offsprings are not identical. Okay. So how are the offspring? The offsprings are totally different. The offsprings are having variation, which is very important for evolution. Which is very important for evolution or the origin of new species. If there will be no variation, there will be no origin of new species. There will be no origin of new species. Clear? So, now this was the total structure of sexual reproduction. I hope you got it. What is sexual reproduction? The sexual reproduction is also happened is also happened in the plants as well as in the animals. Okay. Now, in the sexual reproduction, as we studied about different stages and steps, as you know. So first is the juvenile period. Juvenile period, when the juvenile phase or the vegetative phase, juvenile period in case of the animals, obviously animal babies when the animal are babies, and vegetative phase in case of the plant. When the plant are not in the reproductive phase, this phase determines that when they are not capable of reproduction, not capable of reproduction. So when they're not capable of reproduction, these are the phase, that is juvenile phase and vegetative phase. Okay. Now, what happens that after this, a very important phase comes, that is your reproduction phase. When the children or the babies are grown, they attain the puberty, right? And when the vegetative phase is grown and they get sexual maturity, then it is known as the reproductive phase. Okay. Reproductive phase goes for a variable duration. Okay. It goes for a variable duration. Like in case of the humans, if we say, the females can reproduce up to the age of 45 to 50 years. After that, they cannot reproduce. But in case of the males, they can also reproduce till they can form gametes till 60. After 60 also they can form the gametes. So this is the difference. That is, sexual or the reproductive phase can vary from person to person, from organism to organism, from animal to animal. So it will have a variation duration. Okay. Now, when there was a change from the juvenile period, or when they were babies, from the babies to mature adult, there was lots of changes. And what are these changes? We can study what type of changes they had. So these changes were morphological, that is in appearance, morphological, and these changes were physiological. Their changes were physiological. When they were babies, the eyes were when they were babies, they were short arms, short legs, short stature, short each and everything, and they was very small fingers, each and everything, right? When we are adult, we have big fingers, we have big legs, we have big mouth, we have big each and everything. It is big. So there's a change in our digestive tract. Our digestive tract is changed. Our nervous system is changed. So yes, this change was due to the physiological change. This was that is internal changes. Internal body changes will be your physiological change, and external or the outside body changes will be your morphological change. Okay. So for physiological and morphological, both are totally different changes. In appearance, we say that the male, what they may say, they get beards, right? They get mustaches, and they get pubic hairs. In cases of the males and the females, both they get pubic hairs. So yes, these type of changes are the morphological changes which we can see actually in appearance. But when your digestive tract gets longer, when your digestive tract gets bigger, okay, you are not able to see it. So it is an internal body change. Morphological is an external body change. Clear? Now in case of the plants, what actually happens? Study plants. Okay, so plants are a two type: annual plant, annual and biennial. And here is perennial. Annual plants mean who show that vegetative phase and the senescent phase only once. So in their whole lifetime, the vegetative phase will come only once. Okay, once. And perennial plant that live long, difficult to define the phases. Matlab, you cannot define the phases in them. For example, a bamboo tree. What I said, the bamboo tree can live up to I didn't say about bamboo tree. Bamboo tree can live up to 50 to 100 years. So no one will be sitting beside the bamboo tree and counting from 50 to 100 years that what were the changes in their vegetative phase, when they were reproducing, when they were not reproducing, right? So this is the difference between the perennial plants and the biennial plants. Okay, now this bamboo tree, this perennial plant only flowers once. Okay. So this bamboo tree only flowers once in their whole lifetime. In their whole lifetime. That is, in the 50 to 100 years, it only flowers once. Okay. So this is no, and this is and another flower is there, which is very important, which is present in your NCERT itself. Strobelanthus Puntyana. Strobelanthus Puntyana. It is a scientific name, so you must underline it separately. So Strobelanthus Puntyana is known as Neela Kuranji. It is known as Neela Kuranji. Okay. Neela Kuranji, what happens? It flowers only once in a 12 years. Once in a 12 years. Okay. And then they die. So this also die and then they die. Once in a 12 years they flower and then they die. Okay. So this was the difference between the plants. In the annual and the biennial plant, they clearly show their vegetative reproduction. Okay. In their vegetative phase, they show their vegetative phase in their lifetime, and this in the perennial plants they show vegetative phase only once in their lifetime, only once, whereas they clearly show. Right? Okay. Now we'll come to mammals. Mammals. So mammals are of placental. Okay, these are the placental mammals. We'll talk about placental mammals only. Two types. Okay, mammals are of two types. So first one is non-primates. And another one is primates. So non-primates are those one. Primates are always human beings. Humans, monkeys or human ancestor like people. Monkeys, human-find, apes, okay, etc. These will be your primates. Okay, and non-primates are cows, sheep, rats, etc. So these will be your non-primates. Okay. Now what happened? These primates goes on for oestrus cycle. oestrus cycle. Whereas non-primates goes on for menstrual cycle. As I'm talking about the reproductive phase of both the mammals and the plants and the animals, so I'm also talking about there two phases. In the reproductive phase of the mammals, what happens? In the reproductive phase of the mammals, what happens? Reproductive phase of the non-primates goes on through the oestrus cycle, whereas reproductive phase of the primates or the or such mammals like monkeys, such mammals like humans, such mammals like your apes, it goes on through the menstrual cycle. Okay. Now, on the basis of these two cycles, there are breeders. On the basis of these two cycles, there are breeders. Okay. When do they breed? So, two type of breeders we can find. We can find a seasonal breeder. We can find seasonal breeder, or we can find continuous breeder. We can find continuous breeder. Okay. Seasonal breeder and continuous breeder. Now, seasonal breeder are those who are seasonal breeder. Seasonal breeder are those which exhibit the cycle only during the favorable season during the reproductive phase. Okay. When there is favorable season, then only they have their reproductive phase. Okay. And continuous breeder, for continuous breeders, there is no need of favorable season. They reproduce throughout. So they reproduce throughout the year. Okay. Like the humans. We can reproduce throughout the year. We can also have the reproduction phase in any of our month. From January to December, we can have a reproductive phase in any of the month. Okay, but in case of the seasonal breeders, like the dogs, like the cows, the sheep, they say they only breed at a certain time. Okay, now we'll come to the important point, that is events of sexual reproduction. Okay, so what are the events of sexual reproduction? So events of sexual reproduction actually goes in three main stages. Okay, that is, I told you, first is pre-fertilization. Okay, pre-fertilization. Second is fertilization. Fertilization. And third one is post-fertilization. Third one is post-fertilization. Okay. Now, pre-fertilization is done prior to fusion. Prior to fusion, when there is no fusion, before fusion, pre-fertilization is done. Okay. Fertilization is the phase of the fusion. Now, in the pre-fertilization, you clearly study about pre-fertilization first. In the pre-fertilization, the event that is happening, that is gametogenesis. Right? The event that happens in pre-fertilization is gametogenesis. Right? Gametogenesis happens. Now, the process of formation of the male and the female gamete is known as gametogenesis. And here we find haploid cells. Always remember that gametes are always haploid. Gametes are always n in number. May it be anything, but the gametes are always n in number. Okay? One second. Okay. So gametes are always n in number. Now in some organism or algae, the two gametes are similar in appearance. When the gametes are of similar in appearance, then they are known as isogametes. Okay. When these gametes, when the gametes are similar in appearance, then these are known as isogametes. Iso means same and gametes, isogametes. Okay. Or we may say homogamete. Homo means also same, so we also may say homogamete. And this is seen in the case of algae. This is seen in the case of algae. So algae is an example where we can find isogamete or homogamete. Now in majority of the organism, the gametes are different, right? Gametes are different. When the gametes will be different, these are two morphologically distinct gametes. That is, we can find male gamete and the female gamete. Okay, these are different. So these are known as the heterogametes. Hetero means different and gametes, heterogametes. Clear? Okay. Isogamete is also found in cladophora. Okay. So isogametes are also found in cladophora. Similar looking gametes. And heterogametes are found in fucus. Heterogametes are also found in humans. So this is an example of heterogamete. Okay, is it clear? The sexual reproduction generally involves the fusion of the gametes from two different individuals, but this is not always true. Okay, sometimes it is not from two different individuals. It can also be from same. It is not two different individuals. Okay. Now, in case of sexuality, what we can find? So now you have to study about sexuality. So in case of sexuality, we can find two types of organism. One is monoecious. One is monoecious. And another is dioecious. Another is dioecious. So what do you mean by monoecious? Monoecious is actually bisexual. Bisexual. Mono means one. So only one will be there. And वो एक कहते हैं ना कि हम एक ही काफी हैं. So that is only in one single organism we can find two main characters. That is the male character also, plus we can also find the female character. This is known as bisexual. Okay, this is also known as hermaphrodite. This is known as hermaphrodite. And example is, I'll tell the example once second. And dioecious are totally the opposite. Unisexual, heterogametes. Heterogametes. Okay. Okay. So the main example which is important to remember, that is, we can remember like this: homothallic fungi. Okay. And in dioecious we can say heterothallic fungi. It was so easy, right? So easy to remember the example. Okay. Now, this was the case of the sexuality in the organism. So, two types of sexuality you can find: monoecious and dioecious. Well, again, we have completed a site. Today, we're reading so much. Yes, let me upload more slides. I'll upload. Okay. So now we come with plants. Okay, I'll complete this topic as soon as possible. plants, what we can find, unisexual male flower which has stamens, right? And this is known as staminate. And female flower, unisexual female flower has pistils. Okay, so it is known as pistillate. Okay, this condition is known as pistillate. Now, if it is present on same individual, same individual means female plus male is present on the same plant, then it will be known as monoecious, which I already taught, right? If it will be different individual, then it will be different, or we may say separate, not different but separate individual. Okay, then it will be known as dioecious. Clear? Monoecious plants example is cucurbita and coconut. Dioecious plants example is papaya and date plum. Okay, dear students, so this was about the plants. In case of animals, what will let's study? Animals. Suppose it is animals. Then also there is function. Two types are there, right? One is bisexual, which is known as hermaphrodite. And who is hermaphrodite? You will say in the chat section. Unisexual, right? Hermaphrodite are earthworm, leeches, sponges, tapeworm, some annelids. Okay. Next, unisexual are, who are the unisexual? Like us. This was the example. Like cockroach, male and female cockroach is there. Ascaris, male and female ascaris is there. Humans, male and female human is there. Birds, right? Male and female birds are also there. Now, cell division during gamete formation, we know that gamete is haploid. If the parent is haploid, right, in case of the fungi, algae, bryophyta, then mitosis will be done and then we will have the gamete formation. If the parent is diploid, then the meiosis will be done and we will have gamete formation. So why do we do meiosis and mitosis? If there is haploid parent, then mitosis is done. If there is diploid organism or diploid parent, then meiosis is done. Okay. Now, fungi, algae and bryophyta. If this type of organisms are there who is having n number, then it will be going mitosis, and then as usual there will be gamete formation. There will be gamete formation, right? And after meiosis also there will be gamete formation. But if the parent is 2n, such as pteridophyta, then gymnosperms, then angiosperms, or most of the animals, plus most of the animals. Then there will be diploid parent, there will be meiosis, and there will be gamete formation. Clear? So bisexual animal is earthworm, unisexual animal is cockroach, monoecious plant is khara, dioecious plant is markensia. In the previous slide I have not mentioned monoecious. Yes, monoecious plant is khara, dioecious plant is markensia. Okay, so this is very important. Okay, bisexual flower, we will have bisexual flower. Bisexual flower, it will be sweet potato. Sweet potato has bisexual flower. So you have to just remember these examples, nothing else. Okay. Now we will study about gamete transfer. Number B option is gamete transfer. How the gamete is transferred. Well, so the gamete is, in the majority of the organism, there are two types of gamete. One is the male gamete, which is motile in nature, that is it can move, okay, it can move. And another is female gamete, which is sessile in nature, which cannot move, it can't move. Okay, male gamete is smaller in size, and female gamete is bigger in size. Female gamete is bigger in size. Okay. Now, when there will be gamete transfer, then the male gamete will travel to the female gamete. The male gamete will travel to the female gamete. In case of the angiosperm and the red algae, both the female and the male gamete are non-motile. That is, in the angiosperm and the red algae, both the gametes cannot move. So what happens in case of the algae, bryophyta, pteridophyta? The gametes move by the water current. Okay. So in case of the algae, bryophyta, pteridophyta, right? The gamete move by the water currents. Okay. So the gamete are what? The gamete are stationary. The gamete are sessile. The gamete are stationary. They cannot move in algae, bryophyta, and pteridophyta. So they are moved by the water currents or via the water. A lot of gametes fail to reach the female gamete. Okay, the lot of gametes are traveled somewhere else and they are not able to reach the female gamete. So the male gamete produces thousands, but if there is one male gamete, produced in this case of the plant, then equivalent to the male gamete, there are 1,000 female gametes produced. 1,000 female gametes produced. So that if some of the female gametes fail to reach the male gamete, then others will somehow reach. So thousands of the female gametes are produced. In a bisexual reproduction, that there will be self-fertilizing plants, for example the peas, then there will be in the bisexual reproduction in the cases of plants. If we talk about, one second. If we talk about bisexual reproduction, in case of plants obviously, then what happens in case of bisexual reproduction? If there is self-pollination, as we can say example, Mendel's pea plant. So in pea there was self-pollination. So anthers are located close to each other. Anthers and the stigma are located close to each other. And whenever the pollen grains are matured in the anther, the pollen grains falls on the stigma and it sticks to the stigma, and then they travels to the female gametophyte, right? And thus there is pollination, or the shading of the pollen grains come in contact with the stigma. Clear? Now in the cross pollination or in the dioecious plant, what happens? Some agents are there who does this cross pollination. Okay, some agents are there who is doing this cross pollination. In case of the cross pollination, when it is done, two different plants are there, of the two different flowers are there of the same plant, then there is some agents. Who are these agents? These agents can be wind, these agents can be air, this wind or air, these agents can be your water, these agents can be your birds, okay, different types of animals. These are the agents. Snails, these are the agents, okay. So they help in the reproduction. So the mechanism of the transfer of the pollen grain from the anther to the stigma is known as pollination. If there is successful transfer, always there is no successful transfer, no. So if there is successful transfer, then it is then pollination happens, okay. If the transfer is successful, then there is pollination. And if there is if there is no successful transfer, then there is no pollination. So this is the factor which happens in case of the plants. Okay, now coming to the fertilization event, which generally happens in case of the fertilization. Direct fertilization is done in case of the humans or the mammals, we may say. Fertilization. So fertilization is one of the most vital event. It is one of the most vital event. If there was no fertilization, there would be no pollination, no nothing. So fertilization is nothing but the fusion of the male gamete with the female gamete. Fusion of the male gamete with the female gamete. So in this fertilization is also known as syngamy. Another word of fertilization is known as syngamy. We can call fertilization as syngamy. Okay, which is the formation of the zygote. Formation of diploid zygote. Okay, formation of diploid zygote. Now, in some organisms like the honeybees, some lizards and turkeys, the female gamete only develops the new organism. This is known as parthenogenesis. There is no father. If the female gamete develops, then this development of the new organism, and there is no fertilization needed. No fertilization needed. Okay, this total phenomena is known as parthenogenesis. Parthenogenesis. Because the development of the female gamete can only arise to a new organism, and there is no father needed. So without father, when there will be no fertilization, in case of sexually reproducing organisms like honeybee, turkey, lizard, turkeys, etc., female gamete development is known as the development of the new organism. So there will be no father needed. When there will be no father needed, then it will be known as parthenogenesis. Clear? Now we'll come to next topic, that is fertilization is known as internal and external, right? Fertilization is two types, internal and external. So we'll discuss the external fertilization first. In the aquatic organism, this external fertilization happens. Okay, because the gamete or the male gamete in the algae, in kind of the fishes, okay, in the amphibians like the frogs, syngamy occurs in the external medium, that is the outside the body of the organism, which are already said. Outside the body of the organism. Okay, this is known as external fertilization. When the fertilization in the higher plants like the fungi, higher animals and higher plants, then it is known as internal fertilization. Okay, fertilization inside the body of the organism. Inside the body of the organism. Clear? Now, in internal fertilization, there are lots of events like the egg is formed inside the female body. So the egg is formed inside the female body, right? Then this egg, the male gamete fuses with the egg. Okay. Then the female gamete is there, and the male gamete fuses with the egg. Okay. Now, two type of things we get. One is the in bryophytes. In bryophytes, we get in bryophytes and pteridophytes, and in the seed plants. Okay. In the bryophytes and pteridophytes, we get that the male gamete is motile and reaches the female gamete. Here the male gamete is motile and it reaches the female gamete somehow. Okay. But in the seeded plant, the male gamete is non-motile. The male gamete is non-motile and it is carried via the pollen tube. It is carried via the pollen tube. As the anther falls as the anther shades the pollen grains, it falls on the stigma of the flower. The stigma carries this anther, or the stigma carries the male gametes to the ovary or the female or to the egg. Okay, so this type of fertilization is known as seeded. In the seeded plant, this type of fertilization is known as internal fertilization. Okay. Now, after fertilization, what else happens? Add more slides. Hopefully, we'll complete this now. Yes. So, after fertilization, that is the third step. That is in the third step, there comes post-fertilization. Post-fertilization. Okay. So, in post-fertilization events, it comes after the formation of zygote. Clear? Now, the zygote which is formed in the case of internal fertilization was inside. The zygote which is formed in the external fertilization was outside, right? Now, in the fungi and the algae, the zygote develops a thick wall. It is resistant to damage and desiccation and undergoes a period of rest before germination. Now, zygote is a vital link that ensures continuity to the species between the generation. So, when there is one generation, that is a parental generation and the offspring generation, the zygote is the link between the parental generation and offspring generation, which ensures the continuity of the species. After the formation of the zygote, it will ensure the continuity of the species or the continuity of the life, because every male gamete and every female gamete cannot fuse, right? And if they are fusing, then also they are not forming the zygote. Sometimes it happens that after the fusion of the male and the female gametes also, they are not forming the zygote, right? And if they are forming the zygote also, the zygote is not able to turn into the embryo. So when the zygote is turning into the embryo full and finally, then that is known as embryogenesis, which is again very most important after fertilization or after the post-fertilization event. The process of development of the embryo from the zygote, it is known as embryogenesis. Now, how the zygote, embryo develops from the zygote? The embryo develops from the zygote through some events like cell differentiation or cell division. So cell division is there and differentiation is there. First it divides and then it differentiates into different categories. Then only a new cell structure, cellular structure we get, that is known as the embryo, and that event or that phase is totally known as embryogenesis. Okay. The development of the embryo is of two types. Okay. Embryo development is of two types. Okay. Development of embryo is of two types. One is outside the female body, that is by laying eggs. Okay. And inside the female body, that is by giving birth. This is known as viviparous. Sorry, this is known as oviparous. Oviparous. And this is known as viviparous, which we have already discussed in this session, but I'm clearing you again. Now, in the plants, we have come to the end of this session. So, in the plants, the zygote is formed inside the ovule, right? And after fertilization, what we get? We get the flower. Okay. In case of the plants, let me see. In plants, what happens? The zygote is formed inside the ovule. When the zygote is formed, it is formed inside ovule. In the next chapter, we are going to study about sexual reproduction in plants. So this topic will continue in the second chapter or the chapter 2 of class 12. So if you're watching this video, then make sure that you are attending the next session also. Okay, next. So this is, and then we are forming after fertilization. What happens? After fertilization. So, after fertilization, we get what? Some of the things we get, that is sepals, petals, and stamens fall off. Okay, and pistil remain attached. Clear? Now, what we get? Zygote forms the embryo. Clear? Ovules forms the seed. And ovary forms the fruit. Okay. So this was very, very important. Okay. So this was the end of the total session. Hope you liked this session. We have completed the first chapter, that is reproduction in organisms. And if you have any doubt, you can ask in the comment section or the chat section. Yes. I'll be just waiting for 2 minutes so that you can ask anything. We have completed the first chapter. In the second chapter, we'll start with sexual reproduction in the flowering plants. And in the last, we can see that some seed structure or the few kind of seed structure is showing after embryogenesis, which we will study in detail in chapter 2. Okay. In the flowering plants, actually zygote is formed inside the ovule, and after the fertilization, we get such types of seeds like the seed like which are having the protective pericarp over it. Okay. If we draw some seeds like this, take an example, and if we draw like this, some seeds are present. So this is the protective upper covering, and then this is the seed. Okay. Again, if we draw another seed, then if these two are present, then this is the protective covering. This is the seed. Okay. Like this was the seed formation and actually the fruit formation. This P is known as the pericarp. Okay. This P is known as the pericarp. And this is the seed. Pericarp is the protective covering of the seed. Clear? Now we totally end this session. The process of embryo from the zygote is called embryogenesis. We have completed in the flowering plants. After fertilization, ovary develops into fruit, ovule develops into mature seed. Inside the mature seed is the progenitor of the next generation, that is the embryo. Clear? Now, so I hope you love this session, love this class. Don't forget to subscribe to our amazing channel, ANAMIKA'S EDUSPACE, and also to hit the like button, comment down below, and also share this video with your friends if you like this video, and help us going. Till then, stay tuned to ANAMIKA'S EDUSPACE. Bye bye.